Are they walking?
Walking or all
okay. Okay, sounds good. I'm Nolan, by the way. I've been working on a documentary about everything. I've been talking with the family quite a bit, so
okay.
I can about piece up when she gets here. And, good.
How are you today?
Press so you don't have a coat on.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm a certain amount of energy.
Yeah, heated by the passion of the issue.
Yeah. I was afraid the clouds would shut us out.
Oh, yeah. Just looking at the weather for the rest of the week, it's going to be in like the 30s.
Yeah.
Golly.
Back to winter.
Back to winter.
Yeah, I guess. After a summer.
Yeah, exactly.
In California, it's easy.
It's, yeah, too easy.
There was a group of like 10 or 15
It's called blackberry weather.
What's that? Blackberry weather? They grow better in August or July when they get cold?
It does that, and then it's blackberries.
Sounds good.
Yeah, this is not city-sized market, so it's more people
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just wondering this song, just so people can see it. Y'all here? Y'all ready? Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning. You all ready to get started? Yeah, all right. So we're here for the same reason you are. We're here because Manuel, Paez, Teran's family wants answers, and we are not getting any answers. There's no way for us to provide that to you. We have an autopsy. Brian Spears from our office We'll be talking to you about the contents of that autopsy. But you are not going to find the answers that you want in that autopsy. It is not enough for us to work backward from it to figure out what happened. The only people who know what happened in the forest that day are the officers who were present and the GBI who is investigating. The GBI has repeatedly declined to meet with us, to talk to us, or to present any evidence to us. In fact, they have also prevented the release of information by the City of Atlanta. After the City of Atlanta began releasing videos of the day they were clearing the forest, the City of Atlanta stopped. And the reason they stopped is because the GBI told them to. We have filed a lawsuit concerning the refusal of the city to provide records on an ongoing basis. Wingo Smith from our office will talk to you about that momentarily. The family is here yet again. We were here last month, we're here this month, seeking answers. Imagine your child was killed by the police under suspicious circumstances, and imagine the police will tell you nothing. What suspicious circumstances? Just to give context to everything that will follow here. The forest was being cleared in an unprecedented crackdown against protesters. The police went to the forest that morning planning for violence. You can see it in the City of Atlanta videos. They formed firing squads, multiple officers with weapons drawn. It was a powder keg, and the moment there was a lapse in judgment on anyone's behalf, there would be death. That was what was guaranteed when they were clearing the forest of these peaceful protesters. To that point, no one had injured a law enforcement officer. No one had attacked a law enforcement officer. And yet they went to clear the forest of sit-in protesters at gunpoint. They did reconnaissance on the site. It was a planned operation. Yet no one had a body camera when they shot Manuel, or so we are told. We are asking for the immediate release of all information from the GBI rather than the selective release that we saw in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. The GBI had no problem putting its weight behind its narrative, and then, after its narrative was released, invoking the investigation. Doesn't make sense. I understand the need for integrity in an investigation. I understand not wanting witnesses to hear what other witnesses have said or to see all of the videos before they're asked questions. But once you release what the official narrative is, the investigation is tainted already. Now they have had plenty of time, and we have nothing. The larger context of this unprecedented crackdown is the domestic terrorism charges and the use of the state's force to quell dissent. This is an alarm. This is terrifying. People are sitting in the DeKalb County Jail right now who have no factual basis for the charges against them, at least none that have been articulated, simply because they were charged with domestic terrorism. None of the people in the jail right now have an allegation that they threw a Molotov cocktail, that they lit a construction equipment on fire, that they shot off fireworks. None of the allegations we heard were specific to any person, and yet we have 21 people in the DeKalb County Jail denied bond. This is continuing. This is ongoing. This is intimidation by the state against dissent. But we are here today to focus on Manuel's case and Manuel's family. But that is the context in which this family is suffering. Watching the state use all of its power, watching local, state, federal, county, city government in lockstep. It is a terrifying alignment of power. And I hope that you all will ask these questions before this power spreads to other issues. Is this what Cop City is going to bring to our city? Is this the type of policing that they will be training for raids, to serve arrest warrants at gunpoint and group meetings? Do they want us to be scared? Because people are scared. The family is scared. We want them to know what happened to their child. With that, I will turn it over to my partner, Brian Spears, who will talk about the results of the autopsy, and then we'll hear from Wingo Smith. We'll talk about the open records lawsuit that we filed, and then the family will all make a brief statement. They will not be answering questions. If you have questions at the end, we'll be happy to field those to the extent we can.
Thank you, everyone. My name again is Brian Spears. Today we continue to search for the facts surrounding the death of Manuel Paez Teran. As we explained in our first press conference on February the 6th, the DeKalb County Medical Examiner's Office conducted the first autopsy. That's an autopsy which has not been released, and the family has had no access to it. On January the 31st, at the request of the family, forensic pathologist Dr. Chris Sperry conducted a second autopsy. Today we released the whole autopsy report. Copies of it are being distributed now, and if we run out of the copies, we'll provide more. We are here today to talk about what we learned from that autopsy and demand the release of the investigation conducted by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. What did we learn from this autopsy? We learned that Manuel died from multiple gunshot wounds. We knew that already. Manuel was shot so many times and by different firearms that the tracks of the bullets running through the body converge and intersect. That means that the same parts of his body were shot by different officers. The autopsy identifies 14 separate gunshot injuries. Manuel was shot in the head through his right eye, in the left upper chest, in the abdomen, in his arms, and in their legs. The hands were all shot up. According to the autopsy, the wounds indicate that Manuel's left arm and hand were raised when Manuel was shot, with the palm facing the front of the body. Manuel's right forearm and right hand were also shot. The gunshot to the head would have killed them instantly, but probably, in the words of the report, not before they were able to raise their hands and arms in front of their body, like that. Manuel's legs were shot with shotgun slugs and probably buckshot, leading to the conclusion that two different shotguns were fired at Manuel before they died. The wounds to the legs are consistent with Manuel having been shot while they were sitting down cross-legged. Manuel was likely shot by individuals, according to the report, standing in front of them relatively close. Manuel was looking death in the face, hands raised when killed. Manuel was looking death in the face, hands raised when killed. We still do not know what happened in the forest on the morning of January 18th. We do not stand here today telling you that we know what happened. This second autopsy is a snapshot of what happened, but it is not the whole story. What we want is simple. GBI, meet with the family, and release the investigative report. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Wingo Smith. 8 days after law enforcement officers shot Manuel, we began asking for records from different departments in Georgia about what happened that day. The Atlanta Police Department did the right thing when they promised to provide those records to the family, including recordings from the morning of January 18th, 2023. But the recordings are powerful. It is one thing to say law enforcement shot Manuel 13 times. It is another to hear it. Those recordings caught fire, and as you know, reporters and others began listening to the recordings, to the shots, and to what the officers said as it happened. And some of what those officers said was inconvenient for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. It raised questions about the only information the GBI had released to that point about the investigation. And the narrative that the GBI was building that Jeff talked about earlier. When inconvenient information came to light, the GBI decided to interfere with the Atlanta Police Department. It wrote the APD a letter asking it to stop releasing videos and other material related to what happened that morning. Mind you, the GBI, as we've already discussed, had no problem releasing selected videos, even from the arrest last week on March 5th, within 24 hours of those arrests, and had no problem releasing other information about Manuel that they said conformed to the narrative that they were putting forth. Also, in addition to the GBI, the Attorney General's office sent a letter to the City of Atlanta advising it didn't have to release the records to the family. It appears there has been a coordinated campaign to silence the City of Atlanta, and it worked. The APD then refused to release the rest of the recordings in its possession to the family or to the media. Manuel's family deserves answers. They need answers to what happened that day. And it is our job to try and get the information that is necessary to find those answers. So when the GBI intervened and the City of Atlanta stopped providing the records that they were promised to provide, we had no choice but to file a lawsuit to secure those records under the Georgia Open Records Act. Without truth, there can be no reconciliation. Without truth, there can be no justice. Without truth, this family can find no peace. We ask the APD to release the rest of the recordings in its possession. Thank you for your time this morning.
My name is Teran. My child, Manuel Esteban Paez Teran, was killed here in Atlanta on the 18th of January 2023. We still do not know anything. It was killed our most beloved family member and the most caring person that any group of people could have, and there is only silence. Manuel loved the forest, gave them peace. They meditate there. The forest connected them with God. I never thought that Manuel could die in a meditation position. My heart is destroyed. I invest so much time, care, and dedication to educate my children to become active members of a society. I gave them love and compassion as tools to make the world a better place. But now there is no answers. I try to be strong, to continue Manuel's legacy, for the love of my family and for all those love Manuel. I want answers for my child homicides. I'm asking for answers to my child homicide. I am suffering for my right to this answer, and that I have not been given, and I deserve answers. Thank you.
My name is Daniel Paez. Even amongst friends and family, the narrative the police have laid out is believed. My life has been frozen with Manny being guilty until proven innocent. I would like to share how that has affected me. This is an example of messages I have been receiving. I quote, "I'm glad your son got killed firing a gun at cops. It was a cowardly act of his, and he got what he deserved. You scumbags, go back to the country you came from. It's been a burden I've mostly kept hidden from my family. I share it now because I need to know the truth. All of this is occurring while people are terrified of police escalation. I can't even attend a vigil for Manny without 10 cop cars showing up or a low-flying helicopter showing up to intimidate us. In Atlanta, I feel hated. The current narrative is that my voice values less for being out of state, despite my 10 years of military service. It's ironic, I'm trusted with nuclear secrets, but I am not trusted with the evidence of my siblings' murder."
I'm going to start reading just one verse of the Bible. It's a promise from Jesus Christ. "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." As father of Manuel, Paez, Teran, we have received two narratives from authorities about the assassination of my child. The first narrative we got come less than 24 hours of his assassination. There was a violent individual that hurt an officer. That is the narrative expressed by the governor of Georgia, Atlanta mayor, and chief of police. Family has not been informed. The second narrative that came once Atlanta police revealed to the public some videos of their body cameras. The officer heard was hit by one of their own. It's so-called friendly fire. In other words, one still unknown officer was hit by one friendly fire shot, and my child was hit by 14 unfriendly, nasty, and violent shots. My child was an outstanding individual that gave his life for others. They gave his life for his ideals. They defend the environment. They convince others with conviction and also with understanding, and never with violence. My child is a hero. Manuel was loved in life. My child, now more than ever, is loved by thousands of communities, not only in Georgia, not only in all United States of America, but also the world. Do not get surprised that people from different states of the Union, indigenous communities, and several countries of the world are coming to Atlanta to give their support for the first environmental activist assassinated in Atlanta, state of Georgia, United States of America. This multitude of people that support us as a family and cry with us as one, they are not terrorists. Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, stop manipulating the information about my son's assassination. You keep us, the family, the community, and the world in total dark about what happened at the forest in January 18, 2023. I have a different narrative about my son. He is a hero. We demand information to our attorneys so we can proceed with a real and independent investigation.
If anyone has any questions, we're happy to field them to the extent we're able. Yes.
The gun that Toruguita allegedly had, do police have that type of gun and that type of bullet also?
It's not something that we can answer at this point. That caliber of weapon, yes, but we don't know exactly what gun was used by each police officer.
Was this the only autopsy that you guys, that was independent of the family that they conducted, or did you guys conduct more than one?
This is the only one.
So the GBI, or the DeKalb counties, and then your guys?
Correct.
And you guys received a copy of DeKalb counties?
DeKalb County has not released a copy of the autopsy to the family.
It's been reported that Manuel was the first climate activist that was killed in U.S. history. I'd love for you guys to speak to the significance of that. I know his father just spoke a little bit about it, but I'd love for you guys to comment on it.
Well,
I think the best way to answer that is that regardless of whether he was the first, it's one that we have to know the truth about. We aren't keeping score in terms of who was the first, and not to malign your question, but it's important because of who he was. It's important because of why he was there, and it's important for all of us to be able to know the full story. We don't have that, and again, like I said before, we don't have all the answers. We're not pretending to have them, but we represent a family who has lost their son, and a family who now is seeking answers from the only sources that are available to us. Remember again, this man in the forest was alone when he was confronted by the array of officers. The officers who in turn are interviewed by the GBI give us an additional picture of what happened. We want that investigative information. We're familiar with responding to and being involved in police investigations. We know what it takes to do them. We also know what it takes to review them and have an opportunity to do that as well. So I hope that it, at least in part, answers your question.
But it also speaks to what's going on in the city, right? We went through Standing Rock, far more contentious. Didn't happen there. Why did it happen here? Why did it happen when they were just clearing the forest of people staging sit-in protests? What is going on, and what are they willing to do to get this thing built? It's a display of force that, whatever happened that actually led to the moments of the shooting, like I said, this was a powder keg. They were going out there, forming a firing squad, surrounding tents, shooting pepper balls into them to clear a peaceful protester. And so, it's exactly what I said before. There are alarm bells going off. There should be. The type of alignment that we're seeing is frightening.
And a state trooper was injured during this incident. Does the autopsy that you guys, this independent autopsy, does it show that there was any gunpowder on Manuel's body, on their hands?
It doesn't show that one way or the other, because as the autopsy, you'll read it in the autopsy, but bodies typically washed after the first autopsy, and that's not something that would be recovered in the subsequent one.
To clarify, you're saying the exit of the gun his hands were like this, not raised in the
That's what it appears from the report. What we're conveying to you is the information that both is contained in the report and the conclusions that can be drawn from it. Again, it's a snapshot. It doesn't give us the whole story. It doesn't tell us what was happening a minute before, 10 seconds before the entry wounds occurred. We just know that that's how he was positioned at the time that certain wounds were inflicted on his body.
It's something that without the context of witness statements, law enforcement detailing how they were positioned, where the shooters were, and other information, without that, we can't offer full context.
Do you have more details about who conducted the autopsy?
Dr. Chris Berry conducted the autopsy. Dr. Chris Berry used to head up the Division of Forensic Sciences for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, otherwise known as the State Medical Examiner. He held that position for a number of years. He's now in private practice and conducts autopsies throughout the country.
Speak a little bit more to this, alleged lack of transparency. Do you feel that this is something that's isolated to this specific case, or is there a pattern with the agencies in terms of that?
Oh, I think there's an ongoing problem in every government with a lack of transparency. That's nothing new. I'm not sure if your question specifically pertains to this.
Do you feel that it's more heightened in this particular?
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to see a lack of transparency, review the arrest warrants for the people who are charged with domestic terrorism. And what you find is a complete lack of a factual basis for each individual charge. We don't charge people with, guilt by association is not a thing. So the lack of a willingness to even detail a factual basis for destroying many people's lives who are denied bond and are sitting in the DeKalb County Jail right now is the quintessential lack of transparency. If there's a basis for this, if there's a basis for domestic terrorism charges, if there is a wide-ranging conspiracy among activists to do actual violence, that is something the community needs to know about right away. And I hope that if that did exist, they would tell us that right away. But they haven't. So I assume it doesn't exist. We'll do one or two more if anyone has anything else.
I reported an autopsy. I mean, you had said that Manuel's hands were raised.
They were raised with the palms towards his body at the time that they reflected by the entry and exit wounds. That's what we can tell.
So, but how, obviously I'm not a doctor. Sitting down, how was the doctor able to determine how he was sitting and all of that?
When you read, we've handed you the autopsy report that we have. The entry and exit wounds on the legs reflect that he was seated and cross-legged. If there's if there was video cameras that shows us something more, great. That's a conclusion that could be drawn, though, from the proximity of the legs and the entry and exit wounds, just as with the hands. So that's the information we have, and those are conclusions that are drawn from it.
Obviously, we haven't seen the DeKalb County report yet.
Right.
My stations have asked for it. If it contradicts what this report says, what can you draw from that?
We'd have to figure it out. I welcome additional information. It's as simple as that. I welcome additional information. Because the second autopsy was not the first autopsy, it could not and did not involve the removal of the projectiles, for example. It did not and could not involve the removal of certain gunpowder deposits that might have been placed on the body. It could not and did not, our autopsy could not and did not reflect whether or not certain of the bullets were fired through the fabric of the tent in which he was positioned. We can't know that. If the first autopsy would have additional information, then we welcome it. So, one more question.
And just for clarification, again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. Are autopsies subjective by whoever's conducting them? Could it depend on who's looking at it? Can this determine?
That's got to depend on the person. I don't know how to answer that. Just to be honest with you, I'm telling. Excuse me?
You guys asked the doctor to conduct the autopsy?
We're not trying to litigate this case with limited information, and you're not going to find the answers that we all want in that autopsy. We need more information from the GBI. Dr. Sperry is not going to solve this for anybody. The GBI knows. The GBI has the evidence. That's where you'll find your answers. All right. Thank you all very much for coming, and we'll see you again next time.
Is that yours?
That's
I need to get the copy that y'all passed out that I didn't get.
I'm going to have to tell you.